Sports.
Our folks, it is a football Monday. That is right. That is right. That's it. That's it. Pete Sousa here. We got Mike Hamilton producing today, which means we brought out the big guns for a big day. We're going to recap, obviously, the Baylor game, obviously, some Cowboys. I'm going to tell you why the Raiders and their fans should be rooting for this team to just absolutely bottom out. Some interesting media stories, and then we got Cam Stewart coming up in the last segment. But we'll start by thanking Slovakics, because this morning I stopped by. Ray wasn't there, by the way. And don't think just because they're a huge sponsor, right? You see him on the upper left-hand side of the screen, that we get stuff for free all the time. I paid for the kolaches. Ray was not there. And I wasn't looking for a free meal or a free ticket anyways. But I was able to soak up the atmosphere and the celebration in Slovakics. We are now on November 4th. November 4th now. So the Christmas shop is alive and kicking. It is, Mike. What are you laughing at?
No, that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting to hear all about the Christmas stuff.
The Christmas shop is
they have a whole separate Christmas shop.
It's wild.
It's gigantic.
So it's booming over there, okay? And everybody's so nice. And I told people, hey, I was there for Ray. But look, I was actually there for the kolaches. That was number one thing. I brought them back here. When you walk into a room full of people and you bring them kolaches from Slovakics, you instantly become the most popular person in said room. And I was that today.
Especially with the sausage ones. Yeah.
There you go.
Loose meat, though. Next time, try the loose meat.
All right.
Ground up meat.
I'm in.
Well, see, I used to teach in West. And so that's where I went all the time. Like, you'd go get a sandwich. You'd go get some, whatever.
There's nothing better.
No. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So
good coffee, too.
Great coffee. The whole deal. So thanks to I got a blueberry muffin as well, but okay, enough of that already. But thanks to Slovakics, and of course the rest of our sponsors. Gordon Harriman's in here somewhere. Is he still taping?
I know that he was in here at 12, so quite possibly he's still there.
Yeah, he's still there. Him and Brad Wesley.
Yep.
No, it's Wesley.
Telling all their secrets.
Brad Wesley's a character from Roadhouse.
Oh, fantastic! I don't know about Brad Wesley.
But yeah, Gordon.
New Roadhouse or old Roadhouse?
I'm an old
Texas
old
Roadhouse.
And first of all, I like Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ray, that's where he and his wife like to go.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think it's the same since they stopped putting the peanuts on the floor?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. It's just you don't slip and fall.
Peanut allergy.
Yeah. But no, the original Roadhouse, there was a guy, Brad Wesley, was bad news. Yeah, we're on to Roadhouse now. Let's get on to the Texas Dallas Cowboys. Forget about Texas Roadhouse. The Cowboys lost yesterday to the Atlanta Falcons. By the way, Falcons are good this year. The game was competitive. It was a pretty fun first half. I listened to Babe Laufenberg and Brad Sham throughout the first half and into the second half. I was driving yesterday. And first of all, those guys do a wonderful job of kind of bringing you to the emotion that Cowboys fans are feeling right now and the disappointment. And I'm going to stop short of desperation, but because those guys aren't desperate fans per se, but they're disappointed. And you can tell that there's not apathy there. There's never apathy when you talk about the Cowboys, but there is great disappointment and great pain for Cowboys fans. And we are at the jumping off point for the Cowboys this season. And here's what I mean by that is it almost might be time to just wrap your arms around this and just lower your expectations if you're a Cowboys fan and get better in the offseason. Hope and pray that, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones do that. You're going to get a new coach. There's going to be a lot. There should be a real shot in the arm provided in the offseason. And the reason I bring all this up now is because the trade deadline is tomorrow in the NFL. And I don't think any Cowboys fan is sitting at home right now or driving in the car or wherever you are thinking, oh, okay, like this is a way that we will get better, is through going ahead and making a trade over the course of the deadline. Like we need to make a trade and that's going to change things. Like nobody in their right mind thinks that. Like this is a Cowboys team that like if you want to look at it here's I'll make it simple. The Cowboys need help at running back, offensive line, and wide receiver. And that's just on the offensive side of the ball. And there's no trade out there that will fix this. There is no quick fix for this problem. And you can compare the way this organization runs now to the way it used to run when they won Super Bowls, 3 of them, basically all thanks to Jimmy Johnson. You could say Barry Switzer came in and took care of the last one, but those titles were built slowly, right? It was, you talk about a team getting very close and a team bonding. Like after you suck so bad, like the Cowboys did in 88 and 89, it's like you're getting off a shipwreck, right? And your team becomes super close. And through all this, you're building your team. Now we talk about in-season trades, okay, in the NFL. Like, what are you really going to get on an in-season trade? And we're going to do two things here. One, I think the best in-season trade I saw was Randy Moss to the Patriots in 2007. Most in-season trades, it's not impactful right away, and it's desperate. You know, Carson Palmer to the Raiders, Eric Dickerson to the Colts. There's all kinds of in-season trades that like were exciting for a minute, but they never you never seen an in-season trade like make a team head to a Super Bowl. It's never happened. And then I guess Amari Cooper was the most recent Cowboys in-season trade that really did have a positive effect for the Cowboys. Now, you want to talk about an in-season trade that actually worked? Well, let's go back, right? We talk about no quick fix. The Cowboys and the Herschel Walker trade. Like, you look at where the Cowboys are right now and how dysfunctional the organization is, how there is a lack of talent and skill that needs to be on the field. Yeah, they got a lot of guys hurt right now, but when those guys were healthy, it's not like, you know, they were knocking the cover off the ball. And if you're a good football team like the Lions, who lost their best defensive player, by far, probably the best defensive player, Aiden Hutchinson, in the league, and their other best defensive player got kicked out of the game in the first half yesterday against the Packers, and they still beat them like they stole something from them. Like, that is a team that if you're a good football team, you can handle certain injuries and find a way to get a patchwork operation that'll, you know, at the very least, like split you a couple games while they're out. And if you're very good, like the Lions, maybe not even lose a step, right? But so in 1989, in the middle of the season, the Dallas Cowboys, it was actually in October. The Cowboys were terrible. And the only player they had on their team that was worth a damn was Herschel Walker. And there was a trade proposal, right? And the trade was the Cowboys would send Herschel Walker and 3 draft picks to Minnesota. In exchange, the Cowboys would get from the Vikings 5 players, 3 draft picks, and conditional picks attached to each of those 5 players should they be cut by Dallas before February 1st, 1990. So here's the big part, right? They got 5 players from the Vikings. Now, those 5 players, if they were cut, would turn into draft picks. This is like a huge gaffe, by the way, for the Minnesota Vikings in their front office, and goes back to how shrewd Jimmy Johnson was to get a deal like this done. Okay, the Vikings' biggest mistake, right, was assuming that the Cowboys were going to keep these 5 players that they traded for because the Cowboys needed help so badly in so many different areas. That's not what they did. The Cowboys cut all of those picks before February 1st, or all of those players before February 1st, 1990. And so that turned them into draft picks. Okay, so they had the worst team in the league. They were gifted these 5 guys who, by the way, it was like Darren Nelson, another guy, Jesse something, a bunch of guys who weren't like jumping off the page at you. It's not like they got Joey Browner from the Vikings, who was like one of their best defensive players. Jesse Solomon was a guy who was a linebacker, but Cowboys didn't use any of them. They turned them all into draft picks. Okay, so those draft picks, well, they ended up being Darren Woodson, Kevin Smith, Clayton Holmes, who wasn't very good, Russell Martin, and Emmitt Smith. And they also won 3 Super Bowls. So on this eve of the trade deadline, we sit here and we talk about, what can the Cowboys do to put like the plug in the jug, right? And that's kind of what it is right now. Like, there's nothing that'll turn this team around and make them a Super Bowl contender, maybe even at this point a playoff contender. And if there is a player out there on another team, like let's say you want to trade for Nick Chubb. Well, Nick Chubb's been hurt for majority of the season, right? So you can maybe give him a pass on that. But the Browns kind of suck. So like that's actually a bad example because Chubb's been hurt, and so that's not fair. But most of the other players out there in the league that you would want, they're on bad teams. And, those teams are bad for a reason. It's not like that one player can write everything in that team for that team, and certainly not for the Cowboys. So that is just it's quite the 180, right? From where the Cowboys were with a building mindset on their way to 3 Super Bowls to where the Cowboys are right now right now, what can we do to make a splash? They had the offseason for that and they passed on it. And they picked up Zeke Elliott, who, by the way, didn't even go with the team to Atlanta because he's missed so many meetings. This is reportedly from people who are close to the source. He's been missing meetings. He's just not happy with the Cowboys, and they're really not happy with him. And apparently both sides were like, hey, why don't you just stay home for this trip? And as Brad Sham said at the end of that broadcast against the Falcons yesterday, Cowboys-Falcons, he and Babe Laufenberg were talking about Zeke not being there. And Brad said, well, unfortunately for Zeke, that's the least of the Cowboys' worries right now. Like, think about that. Someone who they could have gotten in the offseason, of course, it's been talked about, right, over and over again to the point where we're sick, but Derrick Henry. And you can say, hey, running backs don't matter, right? Like, that's what people you think in the offseason, like, you don't have a running back who can play well. It doesn't matter. Like, no, the running back that you signed can't play well. Zeke, he's done. Derrick Henry is a guy who's obviously taken incredible care of his body. He's already at 1,000 yards, I think. Mike, did you want to say something about Derrick Henry?
No, as a ex-Titans fan,
yeah,
as of this season, I think it was a stupid move. You should have moved on him, and you probably should have moved on T. Higgins or somebody like that.
Yeah,
because that's your 1-2 punch. Then you free up CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you've got something at that point. The thing that confused me the most yesterday is when they started talking about, well, no, I guess this was Mosley last night talking about this. He said that, when you go to a game plan where your quarterback has to get rid of the ball as fast as possible, you got problems.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. By the way, so Mosley and Ed Werder, Doomsday Podcast.
Did you see Mosley's tweet yesterday?
What did he say?
Right at the end of the game, he tweeted out and said, Cowboys fans want Mike McCarthy to get jury duty. Like the kicker. I thought that was really good, though. What
about the show yesterday?
It was good. It just
the Doomsday Podcast, which is taped right after Cowboys games and goes up on the Rogue Media Network. It's a huge show.
Taped at my house.
Yeah.
But Ed was obviously not happy.
How pissed was Ed?
Ed was pretty pissed, but Ed
Ed to the point now, because you get body language.
Yeah.
You get Ed offline, and we're not asking for anything crazy like insightful going on in Ed's life.
He wears pants every time.
But he's frustrated with his team, right?
You can see how he has just decided, okay, this is just the way it is, and he's kind of resigned himself to this team is just not good.
Yeah,
I feel bad for Cowboys fans only because my wife is a Cowboys fan. And so it's tough to watch her watch this team that's had so much success in the past and is such a held on a pedestal, amongst all these other teams. And I've said it over and over. You got to stop being okay as a team. Otherwise, you're never going to get any better.
Yeah. There's
got to be a couple years where you just give it up.
So then that's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you very much, Mike Hamilton. And, another thread that has woven through all of pop culture and social media is, and I want you to, Mike, cue this up. This is yesterday. There's no sound of this. You don't need it. But this is yesterday from the broadcast. Go ahead, Mike. Lips there. Can you play it again, Mike? One more time, Mike. You can't read the lips. We effing suck.
That's not hard to read.
No, it's not hard to read. Now, there were 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the game was pretty much out of reach. The Cowboys had an opportunity to get a last-ditch, like, Hail Mary going. Cooper Rush was in the game for Dak, and they scored a touchdown. They tried the onside kick, down by 1 score, didn't get it. Game was over. And look, that frustration is legitimate, okay? And I am always a student. I guess I always believe in that stuff's going to look way worse than it actually is, right? Like an argument on the sidelines between a player and a coach, an argument on the sidelines between a quarterback and a wide receiver, reading lips, right? Like we just did there. Here, the problem is we've seen so much of it with the Cowboys this year. There has been so much focus on the dysfunction that it is like there's so much smoke here that it's bad. I mean, it's real bad. It always reminds me of when the Eagles, right before Ray Rhodes got fired, they were just getting killed. They lost to the 49ers on Monday Night Football. There were people running all over the field. It was at Vet Stadium. People were getting arrested. That's when they had the judge in the basement of the Vet where people could get processed quicker. And Ray Rhodes just met with the media afterwards, and he just said, "It's bad, man. It's real bad." And that's like where we're at with the Cowboys. It's really, really bad. And the last note I'll say about the Cowboys from a philosophical standpoint is, and yesterday, you see on the sidelines from Dak. That's again, I don't hold that against Dak. Like, I still believe these guys are going through crazy emotional stuff. And you're going to see people say things, do things on the sidelines that are just, they shock you, and it's not necessarily, a tea party on the sidelines, right? It gets pretty rough. And I believe, though, the stuff off the field, like the quotes in locker rooms, the Trayvon Diggs coming out of the locker room challenging Mike Leslie last week. Like some of the quotes where Dak is saying that they need to practice harder. There's just like so much, guys who are literally not playing, like Micah Parsons, opening their mouths and providing locker room fodder for other teams. And that's the opposite of how you win a championship. Like, if you think about the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick, if you talk to anybody around that team that covered that team, it's the most boring team to cover ever, even when they weren't doing great, because the culture there and the understanding there is like, this is how you win. Like, you don't give anybody any ammunition that they could use against us or that we can use against each other, right? Like, if we have issues, we keep it in-house, and that's how we work on things. But the number one goal is winning a Super Bowl. And part of that decorum is you don't give people quotes where they can hurt your team. Like, it's fun for us. I love it. But that's just not how you win a Super Bowl. Mike Hamilton, what's up?
So I'm a little older than you. I lived through the Cowboys my entire life. And one thing you could not say about the Cowboys is they were ever out of control. I don't remember a time when the Cowboys were literally out of control. Now, maybe you're talking 70s or something.
Well, I mean, the behavior
and all that stuff.
was.
Yeah, but this is an organization that is spiraling.
Yeah.
And as a Oilers / Titans fan, I can identify that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When those guys come out and say those kind of things, there is nobody watching the henhouse. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And that is a scary prospect.
Yeah.
You say boring. Now, I lived through 22 years of my Spurs being boring, but that was a good thing because you didn't have problems.
That's a basketball example of what we're talking about here. Like the way that all the Spurs handled themselves, and they didn't necessarily hate the media, but they certainly didn't love them, and they knew that had nothing to do with winning a championship, right? Like you take care of your obligations with that, and then you move on.
My biggest issue with that is, everybody's talking Belichick. Oh. Belichick won't fix all of this unless he's given the reins to do it. That's the problem.
Well, we're going to be talking Bill Belichick and more next segment. Why we're going to be talking about Bill Belichick, this is important now. You have to stick around to find out. The Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network, rolls on after this.